This presentation that we are about to hear is co-authored and co-presented by Reverend Dr. Heesung Hwang and Alicia Paullin, both of the Pacific School of Religion. Reverend Dr. Heesung Hwang is Associate Professor of United Methodist Studies, Christian Education and Leadership at PSR and serves as the Academic Director of the Congregational Renewal Cohorts. A Christian religious educator and ordained deacon in the United Methodist Church. Her scholarship centers on Korean American feminist theology and spirituality, anti-racism, and the intersections of theology, pedagogy, and social justice. She is joined by Alicia Paullin, the Director of Academic Digital Strategy and Curriculum Design and Faculty Associate at PSR, a consummate education and learning leader who has dedicated much of her professional life to supporting the growth of individuals and organizations. A lifelong learner herself, she holds an Associate of Occupational Studies in Culinary Arts, a Bachelor of Science in Biology, and a Master of Arts in Education, focused on higher and post-secondary education administration, and is currently pursuing a Doctor of Education in Organizational Leadership. Let's welcome Heesung and Alicia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you, everybody who joining us. Okay, let's share our screen first. Then we will dive into it. So, good afternoon or good evening or good morning, just in case. My name is again Heesung Hwang, and together with my colleague Alicia, and I'd like to share a project that began with a kind of deceptively simple question. What actually happens to formation when theological education moves beyond the classroom? So our paper proposes that distributed digital theological education is not the online delivery of a seminary curriculum, but something structurally different. So what we call now, it is a congregational learning ecology. And I will lay out that framework briefly, and then we will spend our time together putting it to the test with a living case study from our own institution. Next slide. So something has shifted in theological education, kind of quietly, but now irreversibly. The pandemic didn't create the shift so much as it revealed and accelerated it. But here is our central worry, and most of the field still describes the shift in terms of delivery, moving instruction from the classroom to the screen, but we think that misnames what's actually unfolding. Next slide. So, prominent scholar in religious education in this age of digital network and AI, Mary Hess draws the distinction we need here. The real question is not whether to adopt a new media, but whether we are willing to face an adaptive challenge, one requiring not a technical fixes, but a transformation of habits, relationships, and meaning making. And when we treat the digital education as content delivery, we assume formation still belong to residential rhythms and everything else is approximation. But we propose a different reading here. Information doesn't reside in a single site. It unfolds across the relationships, practices, and encounters. So let me name our central concept, the congregational learning ecology. The phrase is deliberately composite here. So congregational signals that the local community of faith does not simply receive seminary-trained leadership from the outside. It is central to formation itself. And ecology points to a system of interdependent relationships where no single element can be understood in isolation. So this inverts the prevailing logic. Most accounts still center the institution as the origin of formation and treating digital infrastructure as an extension cord carrying institutional content outward. But our framework asks instead, not where learning goes, but where and how it is actually made. A shift from delivery to constitution. So our framework draws three conversions together, and digital religion scholarship establishes that media are never neutral carriers. They actively shape community and meaning. And adult learning theory insists that genuine formation requires sustained participation that makes learning answerable to real communities. And Nell's work shows formation can cross digital distance, but only through intentional design, never as the platform's default. And the practical theological reflection demonstrates that the conditions for formation must be deliberately built. And Chloe names that the haunting paradox of students connected yet isolated, present yet absent. So what was missing across all three was a framework holding these insights together within the realities of distributed education. So that's the gap our ecology fills. And at the heart of the framework are four independent sites, and the key is their interaction. So the institution is the theological anchor, vocabulary, memory, normative frameworks it provides. But within an ecology, it is now decentered without being diminished. One voice in a larger conversation, not the origin from which everything flows. And the cohort is the primary space of mutual formation. What makes it powerful isn't shared curriculum. It is that learners bring genuinely different ministry context, creating productive friction that unsettles assumptions. Then the congregation is not where learning gets applied. It is where theology is generated. The unsolved grief, the unnamed conflict, the unexpected grace of ministry become the primary data of inquiry, a living curriculum itself. And digital space is connective tissue here, but more than infrastructure, it is a self-affirmational environment shaping what attention is possible and whose participation is also enabled or foreclosed. With these four sides don't make an ecology just by coexisting. What animates them is praxis, that we call it, the disciplined interplay of action and reflection. A leader encounters a pastoral question in the congregation, then it's carried into digital space and named and shared. The cohort now engages it and generating new perspective, and those insights return to the congregation as transformed practice. Then the cycle begins again and deepens. Without this praxis, the sites isolate. So praxis is what keeps the ecology alive. Then I'll turn the mic to Alicia.
Thank you. So perhaps you're questioning why ecology and not network. This is a load-bearing distinction of the paper. The network language is good at describing connectivity, flow, reach, efficiency, but a network can run with perfect technical efficiency while failing entirely to sustain genuine community. As Hess puts it, digital media tends to produce connection without communion. Ecology carries different values. Where networks privilege efficiency, ecologies privilege independence. Networks are indifferent to diversity. Any node connects to any other, but the ecologies depend on diversity for their health. Networks scale infinitely. Ecologies are sensitive to size because past as a certain point, the relational bonds dissolve. The metaphor isn't decorative. It's theological conviction that formation is relational at its core. And that conviction is exactly what we put to the test in the case I'll turn to now. We examined a single paradigmatic case, the congregational renewal cohort. It launched in September 25th with 22 learners from 6 congregations spanning mainline Protestant, Pentecostal, independent Christian, and notably Buddhist traditions, reflecting the pluralism of the San Francisco Bay Area. The structure was a flipped classroom. Learners engaged material independently during the week, then gathered Saturday mornings for faculty-facilitated live sessions across 9 courses. Now, the retention numbers tell a story worth pausing. We begin with 22 and graduated 14, a 64% completion rate. But the shape of the attrition matters more than the figure. One congregation withdrew collectively at the very onset, accounting for 4 of the 8 departures. A second experienced a gradual individual attrition, dropping from 5 participants to 2. Yet 3 congregations held completely stable throughout. That contrast told us something. Cohort continuity is less a function of initial commitment than of structural or relational conditions that sustain participation over time. And 5 further participants remained on academic hold at the program's close, navigating health and life circumstances that interrupted but not end their engagement. That pattern has pushed us to rethink how we assess readiness and how we support leaders through the unexpected. So already, before we look at a single rating, the case itself is refining the framework, not just illustrating it. So we think that it is worth noting that if we had left out the congregation that departed at the onset of the program, the completion rate would have been 78%, which is very close to the general national completion for online learning, and that's in our first iteration of this cohort. Now, to what participants actually experienced, a thematic analysis across all 9 courses surveys gave us per course ratings ranging from 8.57 to 9.92 on a 10-point scale, which is overwhelmingly positive. But the numbers aren't the interesting part. What participants praise are 6 recurring themes that surfaced: assignments and workload, engagement and discussion, course content, spiritual growth, community and cohorts, and teaching style. And the dimensions that clustered at the very center of the participant commentary were precisely the ones the Ecology was designed to cultivate: engagement, discussion, community building. Additionally, spiritual growth and reflective learning were consistently named as valuable. The case then doesn't just illustrate the framework, it tests and refines it, yielding 3 claims. First, formation is constitutively distributed. No single site produced what their interaction made possible. The Ecology isn't a workaround for circumstances that prevent residential formation. It's a coherent account of how formation actually unfolds. Secondly, access and formation are inseparable. The cohort enrolled bi-vocational leaders, lay ministers without ordained clergy, leaders from underserved traditions. Their diversity wasn't accommodated. It became a formational resource. Widening participation is a condition of depth, not a concession against it. Third, the digital space is never neutral. Every design choice, what the platform makes visible, how it structures attention, is a theological decision, whether or not we name it as one. What this points towards is a different imagination, one that begins with decentering the institution. When the seminary releases its claim to be the sole origin of theological knowledge, it becomes capable of learning from the congregation it has long presumed to teach. The renewal projects weren't applications of curriculum, they were theological contributions in their own right. The congregational learning ecology is not, finally, a solution to the challenge of theological education in a digital age. It's a way of inhabiting those challenges with greater integrity, and remaining open to the unpredictable movement of grace. We bring this to an end with the questions this framework opens rather than closes. How does it function across traditions that don't share its ecclesiastical assumption? Buddhist communities, for instance. How do power, race, and institutional culture shape whose wisdom is genuinely received as primary theological data? And how might the framework be tested across multiple sites and longer cycles? These aren't weaknesses in the account. They are the natural horizon of work serious enough to know what it has not yet seen. Dr. Hwang and I would like to thank you for your time and encourage your thoughts and dialogue after we hear from Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heesung and Alicia. I'd like to introduce Daniel Rivera Rosado, who is the director of the Instituto Biblico JFU in Puerto Rico. Daniel, welcome.
Thanks, everybody. It's nice to be here with all of you. So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. And I hope in whichever time zone God is breathing over you with coffee so you can stay awake as I am over here in Puerto Rico at 9 p.m. in this time. So, I will be sharing with you a process that was engaging in research regarding the behavioral intention of technology integration in theology educators' teaching practices. And this process mainly was the research that I conducted in my dissertation, which I recently defended in February, and I am alive to attest to it. Praise be to God. So this research was based on a quantitative study on, again, the behavioral intention of integrating technology into the teaching practices of theological educators at ATS accredited institutions. What brought us here is that the general aspect of when we think about higher education, we have seen over a long time the development of technology integration, whether modality, format, learning, books, etc. And in through that particular aspect of higher education, theological education, yes, has had an integration into that, but has been a little bit more slower into that process. The specific of this aspect is that this has created some missed opportunities on the theological education aspect for integrating students into accessibility, developing experiences of institutional and instructional effectiveness, and at the same time, where the local church is very open and fast to integrating technology, there is an interesting gap into how theological education has responded to integrating technology. And it's interesting because the local church and its multiple expressions is the end point of what the theological education does. So that puts an interesting aspect to consider into the problem that brings us here. And for this reflection, the unified theory of acceptance and use of technology, the UTOP model, is the theoretical framework that helped or sustained this research. By the way, the UTOP model has a first edition, which was the one that I used for the dissertation, and a second model from 2012, which expanded on habit, hedonic motivation, and value. And we will see what does that mean. I think that a lot of the work that we do in theological education, whether from Bible institutes to graduate theological work, there is always a talk about implementation, things that we have to do, our workload, those amazing and motivating professional development opportunities that we all rush into applying to, etc. But we don't necessarily have a lot of time to reflect on What are the behaviors that draw us to think about what we integrate? And yes, my topic has to do particularly with technology, but I also invite you to reflect while we're talking about this. What are the behavioral intentions of you integrating other stuff in your teaching practices? Whether it's art, whether is it conversations, whether it's a field trip, any other element. What draws your behavior towards that? And the basic definition of this is the individual's motivation and readiness, in this particular case, to adopt and use technology. And interestingly enough, here are the four variables that construct the concept of behavioral intention towards the UTOP model. The UTOP model was created with 8 different learning, psychological, organizational, and technology theories to broaden the concept of technology adaptation and modeling. And out of that process, Venkatesh and his partners address these four aspects. Performance expectancy, basically, how does using technology help me to do better my job? Effort expectancy, is this going to be easy? Is this going to be another load into my routine, or is this going to be flexible? Social influence, what are my peers saying about this? What are they doing? How can I see, as our great and amazing colleagues were saying, how does the ecology of my institution help me to do this? And the facilitating conditions, how is the organizational and infrastructure helping me as a faculty member to integrate that? How is that going to all develop the behavioral intention? And throughout this, they identified 3 key predictors, that is age, gender, and years of experience, particularly in teaching, which were also taken into consideration as moderating variables for in the research. And what does this look like? That the process of analyzing performance expectancy towards gender, performance expectancy towards age, performance expectancy through years of experience, et cetera, that could all fall into place into the process of integrating technology into a way that it can help or to see if it predicts the integration of technology into the teaching practices of faculty members. So the research question is, do these variables actually and significantly predict theological educators' intention to use technology? And why is this important? Because a lot of the research that has been done in theological education regarding technology has directly falls into how do we implement that, but not necessarily how do we behave, how do we think, what is the aspect of reflecting on how do we do the integration part and how do we feel about that. And again, how is this going to help me in my work? How is this going to be more easy or difficult? What do my peers say? And what is my seminary or the administrative structure doing? And interestingly enough, in this process, yes, there has been some resistance. But in a study that ATS conducted in 2014, they were already addressing that a lot of seminaries were thinking about this. Interestingly enough, they were also admitting, because there was a qualitative aspect to that report, that a lot of people who were being hired for technology focused positions were not people who were being trained, who were technology trained to being into those positions. So you had your amazing systematic theologian or your super smart homiletician or gender studies focused faculty peer that maybe used smartly PowerPoint or today Canva, and out of nowhere, maybe they were hired to do that. And that is a very motivating aspect to learn new skills, but not necessarily into the whole aspect of the ecosystem of promoting the integration of technology. So that is something that we need to take into consideration, which later in the implications for practice, we are going to also cover. So there are a lot of aspects to combine into what is happening in higher education, into theological education as forces that can be combined to develop these technology-focused positions for a better understanding of the integration. So the research methodology, and I want to take a shout out to Dr. Deborah Jin who is the director of research at ATS, who was the contact person for me to get the organizational permission form, and also other important institutions that were key to get the message out because I needed a minimum of 103 faculty members, and praise be to God, I got 103 faculty members because we all get to our dissertations and say, "Hey, everybody!" I assume that everybody's going to participate, but yeah, the reality was another thing. But I'll write another paper on that. Don't worry. The thing is that those were the participants. The method was through a multiple linear regression to determine the prediction correlation, and it was through survey research design because the Utah model provides four questions, particularly to, or assertions to evaluate in a 1 through 5 Likert scale in each of the variables. And thankfully, in the analysis, there was a general finding that the whole model, the correlation model, and with the predictors had a 62.5 explainability. So that was very positive in terms of the results. But here are the results, and this is what I want to draw your attention. Performance expectancy. Again, is technology going to help me perform better? That was supported. Effort expectancy. If it's going to be easy and it's not going to affect my workload, that was also supported. Social influence. What do my peers say? That was supported. But facilitating conditions, what's not supported? Again, facilitating conditions, the process of analyzing what do my structure, my infrastructure, my administrative structure provide me, that was not a hypothesis that was supported. And that was very interesting insight to reflect in how our theological seminaries and institutions taking care of the infrastructure of providing material or providing learning experiences and development for theological educators. So it's not only, hey, generative AI is right around the corner, so we need to integrate this. No, how is this going to be a progressive aspect of behavioral conscience and intention to what are we doing each and every day? So here is the aspect. Intentionality is in the progress. And what does this data have to do with our vocation in this time? A first lesson is that definitely faculty are going to adopt technology when they believe it serves their teaching. But it's not only when they see that it helps them create a different or an engaging example when you're teaching pastoral care or where you're trying to navigate the problems of theodicy or whatever, but it's because there has been an honest process of reaching, they're going to understand and they're going to be more moving forward to integrate that when they understand that technology is not only going to help them through the content, but also to reach their student. And in those processes, going to create context and conditions that are going to help them be more intellectually engaged into that process. Another lesson into that is the effort and ease of the matter. And I think that maybe institutions are very motivated when new technology and tools are super in trend. But how is that institution going to navigate? How are we going to integrate this? How are my faculty going to see this as a need? And also ask the question, is this a need currently? So in that process, that is going to reshape the institutional vision so there can be intentional learning opportunity for faculty to have engaging experiences. And finally, there is a very important component. How is the social and institutional culture going to be more intentional and to help? How do we think about technology integration? And this is to understand that it's not only to change just for the sake of changing, is how theological education, sorry, I'm translating in my brain this whole time. How is this process going to be not just an administrative mandate, but it's going to create an ecosystem. It's going to create a learning experience, a mentorship experience, and how the social and institutional culture is eventually or needs to be towards care. And definitely as the hypothesis that would not support it, facilitating conditions gives theological educators and in an administrative sense an idea of to where there needs to be an attention to help faculty members into the process of integrating technology. It's not just giving them the resources, it's giving them the culture of care into that. Concluding, facilitating conditions as a paradox definitely is reshaped through this research. The process of it's not just, again, giving them the resources, is how do we transform the ecosystem? And I think the new culture of training can start with an integration process that leads towards behavior to rethink our faculty development experiences. It's not to just share 5 new learning and teaching theories, is how can this help the faculty be more engaging in their aspect and uh, drawing from their needs. A second aspect is mentoring programs. It's not to just have the dean of technology or the coordinator of technology or the vice president or the aspect, the person who runs that technology aspect, but how do faculty navigate that by dialoguing with each other in a more basic sense. Hiring technology focused staff. If you have the particularity of being a seminary embedded in a bigger institution, and if there is a technology department in all its vast manifestations, how do we navigate partnerships, internships that can have students or faculty that teach and learn over there to integrate that and help broaden the ecosystem of behavioral intention? Vocational development and management. I think that when we're working with faculty, we assume because they have their PhD or whatever doctoral identity into that, that is the only thing they're going to do. No, we need to better explain how is integrating things going to help them navigate their own vocation and in being intentional, their own vocations, because definitely we need to address that technology as an access tool is going to open a whole nother range of visions for their present and their future. Connect the technology integration part to the student formation. How can that expand the process of student services? It's not just to create a fancy presentation, but how can we actually make learning accessible and transformational for our students? And finally, how can technology integration help us communicate better the seminary's vision and mission, which is not or should not be static, but should be an ongoing conversation as a behavioral topic? And I want to leave you with this, and I'm going to intentionally read it. Behavioral intention and vocation. The process of this research must help us reflect on our motivation and readiness factors to educate, provoke a prophetic experience, develop continuing education as a spiritual discipline, and instill educational experiences that are not stuck in time, but transcend limits. Analyzing our behavioral intention as professors is a quest for identity, interest, influence, and intentionality. What factors are promoting newness in your projects? How is your context influencing your creativity? Where is your teaching leading others? How is the divine forming a new next in your life? If by any chance you want to get physical coffee or virtual coffee, those are my contacts. Uh, my full name, it's my LinkedIn handle. And I know that all of you have hundreds and hundreds of hours to spare. So if you have the time, there is the QR code to the dissertation if you would be interested in reading it. It's open access in ProQuest. So that is my time, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Wonderful. It's always good. I wish I had promoted my dissertation when I was finished, so I knew that more than myself and my committee members ever read it. So kudos to you for having a QR code for that. Let's open it up to some questions or comments or some conversation. We have a nice sized little group here. And we've got actually about 24 minutes that we can have conversation. So feel free if you'd like to put something in the chat and have me read it out loud. I'm happy to do that. Or if you'd just like to chime in with your own voice. Hi, Vaughn. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you to all the presenters for wonderful presentations. I'd like to ask the first presenters from classroom to communal ecology to say more about the distinction between networking and ecology. That seemed to me like a crucial distinction, and I'd like to hear more about that.
Okay. Oh, thank you for the question, Vaughn. Just it reminded me of another conversation that I had the other day. I was, talking to somebody who are not Christian, and we were talking. I happened to talk about my summer schedule that I was teaching evangelism, and that person asked me, "Oh, what is evangelism?" And that person just, continually said, "Is there something like a marketing?" Uh, hmm. Okay. Similar, similar, but where to start? That was, that led to another longer conversation. So just like that, redefining and redefining our work from the networking to ecology is that just, naming that, we value more about time-based and, relationship building effort rather than just making network and moving forward. And expanding itself is not our focus. That I think we should be more focused on the relationship building and the spiritual formation also in our seminary context. So that's why we developed this kind of new concept as congregational learning ecology instead of networking or institution to make more organic in this way. Alicia, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, thank you. I also think that it emphasizes interdependence, where networking is connecting dots of different pieces that are needed, but the interdependence in an ecology, you need the water to grow the seed. You need these things for formation. You need the different types of shade and the different types of inputs in nutrition, like you would any other ecology in this type of setting. So this ecosystem that we were able to depict in our case had this from many different, not only denominations in Christianity, but that the one great group of Buddhist input, where we were getting all of these fantastic responses and interactions. And that, in my mind, is that ecosystem that's working together. And it really did help open the eyes of the other participants, of everybody getting to interact with all of these different, not only geographical locations, but also denominational insights and inputs. And that, I think, is the biggest difference between a network and an ecosystem. Sorry, yeah. Daniel, I was thinking while you were speaking that if you would have gone first, you would have proposed the problem, and we would have had a tiny bit of a solution for you.
Definitely, definitely. Now I see that, but not only in the order, but I think that definitely when I saw your presentation, I was like, definitely that is an awesome way of addressing that. Particularly, I even took a photo because it really resonated with the four places where formation occurs, and I think that how does that intersect also with the variables of the UTOP model in terms of how can that be seen in terms of performance, effort, influence and the facilitating conditions into those four aspects that could expand the ecology of that. So yeah, definitely it was a cool reciprocity in that. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah. We're very go ahead, please.
Yeah, just adding to that, I was also thinking like, so moving from network to ecology, and Daniel, you also mentioned about facilitating conditions and then so on, the limitation of, the training the faculty members to get used to the new
Yep.
technology and new platforms over and over again, new platform to a newer platforms. It's
Yeah.
constant work, right?
Yeah.
And to keep this flow moving, that we also need it to back up with more, digital technology, IT staff members, and so on. So otherwise it wouldn't happen. So I think, this, congregational learning ecology itself is a really commitment to make it
Hmm.
happen. Just in having the class, synchronously online via Zoom or Teams or whatever, it doesn't happen. The community building doesn't happen, doesn't it may start there, but you got to
Yes.
continue. You got to have other, sticks, glues, cement, whatever it
Yeah.
takes in between. So yeah.
No, very true. You had identified that as well, Daniel. There has to be intentionality behind the
Yeah.
action. And, we're very blessed at PSR to be a technology forward institution. So we put a lot of time and effort into bringing it into the classroom and then taking it out of the classroom and providing support for other seminaries and theological institutions to also be able to grow and do the things that they can't, knowing that resources are sparse. So where we can, we support that for sure.
And that's also a positive side to the networking thing, because sometimes theological seminaries, and though this is not being recorded right now, that this part
It
will
is
still
being
be
recorded, but I can
being
pause it if
recorded.
you'd like.
No, don't worry. We're too like I don't know, siloed region, confessionality or whatever, and that part of networking is one of the various factors of the facilitated conditions that it's sometimes not present. So I think that definitely, as you are explaining how you guys work towards helping others in that support, that is another factor that can readdress that facilitating condition aspect, not just within your seminary, but also how to make that even more broader. So yeah.
One thing that Heesung just said that kind of struck me is, as a person who's teaching is primarily adjunct or affiliated, meaning that I teach at several different schools. I often have to learn multiple learning platforms because each school uses a different one, and there's definitely a way that takes its toll, as I've talked with other folks who teach at multiple institutions too, of like, oh, having to learn three different learning management systems and all of the quirks of them, and then going to a school and then they change it to another one, and then you're like, I just learned that one. And then, so anyway, just thinking about the ways the interconnectedness can be helpful in terms of, and that ecology is helpful even in terms of supporting your part-time folks, Cheryl has her hand up. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Oops. Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks to all of you, Heesung, Alicia, and Danielle, for your presentations. With my first question will be for Heesung and Alicia. How do you find the leadership, whether deans or presidents of academic institutions, how do they make meaning of the priority between having a network and having an ecological system? Do you find they think about that? And do they think about the long-term effects of promoting either one? That's my first question.
Oh, wow. Alicia has more history with them, so
Yeah,
Alicia can answer more. But
yeah, happy to.
I definitely yes, our leaders. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. They actually are driving the process, and maybe the language hasn't landed in such a way as what Heesung has been able to lay out for our article and our presentation. But always we have to start somewhere, and always we have to initiate a movement or a thought or an initiative. And so language is a huge part of how we tell our story and how we identify what it is that we have to offer and move forward. So are they every day having a thought about ecology versus network? Probably not. But we a recurring theme within our institute is a distributed network, and that's been the language for. I've been with the institution now for 3.5 years or so, and that's been a driving force in getting us to where we are with the congregational renewal cohorts. And then the findings that we had, again, just from that one cohort, this inaugural cohort, it gave us perspective. We were in theory for so long, like trying to get the platform ready and identifying the congregations and bringing them all into the room together. And really, the learning that we got from them has been infinitely amazing. And then our language has shifted because of it. So was it initially a network of ecology versus network? Absolutely not. It started with a distributed network as the undertone, and it grew into this out of being informed by the learners, being informed by the different congregations that have been touched by the work that was done. So it evolved along with the program.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Danielle, I appreciated your comment about how will the use of technology and behavioral interventions integrate? How will the integration help the vocation of people? And I was recently in a situation with an organization that I consult with clinically. My context is clinical consultation, and talking about the use of technology. Some staff, older staff, very resistant to that, and probably identifying with what Jen mentioned about having to learn multiple platforms in different places, which I can appreciate that too. But the resistance, once we started talking about how they saw their vocation and their call to the work that they're doing, and whether this priority of using technology that was being imposed on them could fit so that it would enable them to live out their vocation as they really wanted to, that seemed to resonate with them much better than you're going to need to do this or you're going to lose your job. So I really appreciated your comment about that. And then when Heesung, or was it Alicia who said that, was it Mary Hesher who mentioned transformation of habits and meaning making? One of you mentioned about, that
Yeah.
as the practitioner or the person working in the role where technology is just imperative for your future, you are making a choice as to how am I going to receive this? Am I going to choose to integrate it so that I can serve even better than I am now? It's a deliberate choice. But you both prompted me to think of that when you mentioned that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just adding to your comment, Daniel, I also want to appreciate in how your paper frames technology integration as part of a vocational and even prophetic calling. So I really want to praise that part. I mean, throughout the years, for us at PSR, without seeing just, dealing with the ideas and, developing all the way through before seeing the actual fruit of it, that there were a lot of, questions, doubt, uncertainty, and fears, of course, right? But uh, yes, without the, really driving force from the leadership, it wouldn't happen, right? But now we have a, better language,
Mhm.
this is
And it's
vocation.
yeah, and it's interesting the vocational aspect because literature shows that older faculty and early faculty are more open to integrate technology. But mid-career faculty, there's
Okay.
the resistance. And there are some interesting factors because mid-career faculty, they are probably in their tenure evaluation. They are looking to publish, publish, publish because that's how the Bible says it. And they're trying to navigate all of those responsibilities in a stage where managing again, oh, now I have to learn this one and this other one, but I'm focused that I need to secure this tenure process or this firm that I'm starting or this ministry that I'm developing, etc. So it's interesting to see the diversity of variations of career aspects, but career management is an awesome field of human resources. That is not my specialty. That's my wife's specialty. But it was interesting because I stumbled upon it in a book that had to do with bi-vocational ministry. Because in Puerto Rico, in some historical denominations, that's a bad word. But if we don't address the bi-vocational ministry, we historical churches are going to pass to history if we don't understand what's happening economically. So I was brought up to that concept of career management and the various stages. And I think that sometimes not even the faculty member understands their career management. And when they're not conscious of that, they're putting that into the students that they're teaching. So once we get a healthy stop, or pause, that's a better word, into, hey, this is going to help you be, as you were saying, Cheryl, this is going to help you be a better professional, a better faculty member, a better therapist in your context. It's something that it needs to be talked about because if it's just inserted or imposed in the faculty manual, that's not necessarily going to work. So I think the dialogue process, because at the end, one thing that I've been thinking about is that technology today is going to be important because we see it. Millennials, X, and boomers, and somebody who's still an emeriti faculty or something. But the new students that are going to enter seminary, they don't see it as technology integration because they're already technology natives. So we're still fighting with which LMSs we feel more comfortable or whatever, but they're like, hey, they're gonna manage whichever. And so it's interesting because God's going to continue to call Gen Z, Alpha, and Gen Beta, and how are seminaries going to respond to that? And I think that the various conversations that REA has had, not just on these types of challenges, but also traditional degrees, non-degrees, continuing education, etc. That all is in the mix of a huge conversation that we need to continue to have. And Bible institutes that also serve a particular silo that connects to broader graduate theological education. But I'm going to be quiet now.
See, we've got something in the chat from Christopher. It says, it may seem some sociocultural assumptions have resembled a lazy river, where if you float, you go forward, but now some flows are plugged where others are flooding. Thanks, Christopher.
Thank you. Wow.
got 4 minutes yet. Yep, I see a hand. Hi, Young.
Hello. I just wanted to mention that the session with both Danielle, Heesung, and Alicia has been eye-opening for me as a student who is still studying education and thinking about the educational system. That sorry to all the teachers here, but as a student, I have never thought of including teachers into the system. But, understanding that teachers are also part of the system, I think it's very helpful for me to have an expanded understanding of how teachers also is a part of the system. They also need help. They also need learning, and they also need space for in order to prepare for all of them. That they also need the help and the environment that is helpful for them, which again would be helpful for the students as well, and including the institution and the student as well, and the ecosystem ecology of the theological education has helped me understand how education definitely should not stop in the classroom, but how that may help um, through students to their places of ministry and the church and every other elsewhere that was just mentioned, and to remember that it is not just textbook education that happens in the classroom, but education as something that is influential into the society as well. And it was very eye-opening. So I thank all three all three of you for this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. That was
Thank
great
you.
insight. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
What a great summary.
Yes, thank you, Hyung. Thank you for those of you who are showing up for the last session of this day for a lot of us.
Wow.
Or maybe the first session of the day for some of you who are in other countries. So thank you so much, and have a good rest of the morning, rest of the day, rest of the evening to all of you. Thank you.